For almost 200 years, this island was named after a shipwrecked woman. In 1836, Eliza Fraser survived a wreck off the Queensland coast and came home with a story of captivity among savages. A story that made her famous, sold out theatres, and stuck her name to the island for the next 2 centuries. Almost none of it was true. The real story of this place is older, stranger, and far darker than anything in Eliza Fraser's tale. It involves the tallest rainforest on Earth, growing out of bare sand, lakes that hang impossibly above the ground, a paradise that kills, and a people who were written out of their own island until, in 2023, they finally got its name back. On the night of May 21st, 1836, the brig Stirling Castle struck an uncharted reef off the Queensland coast. The ship, bound for Singapore under Captain James Fraser, began to break apart in the dark. The survivors, including the captain's pregnant wife, Eliza, abandoned the vessel in 2 leaking lifeboats, embarking on a desperate drift southward. They eventually made landfall on the northern sands of Great Sandy Island, near Waddy Point. For 53 days, Eliza Fraser lived among the local Butchulla people. Her husband died on the island, and when she was finally rescued by a search party on August 21st, she returned to a colonial society hungry for stories of frontier horror. In 1837, Eliza published a sensational pamphlet recounting her ordeal. Her narrative painted a lurid picture of captivity, torture, and cannibalism at the hands of those who had actually provided her with food and shelter. Yet, other survivors of the wreck, including second mate John Baxter and steward Joseph Corrales, gave sworn testimonies that directly contradicted her most extreme claims. They described a highly alien but cooperative encounter, free of the violence Eliza claimed, but the public preferred Eliza's version. Each retelling grew more theatrical, transforming a private survival struggle into a political weapon. In the colonial imagination, her fabricated horrors cast the Butchulla as dangerous savages, establishing a powerful justification for the frontier violence that was soon to follow. In 1842, 6 years after the Stirling Castle broke apart, a surveyor named Robert Dixon mapped the region. Dixon did not record the ancient name used by the Butchulla people. Instead, his chart, published in Sydney and formalised in the New South Wales Government Gazette that same year, designated the landmass as Fraser Island. This official cartographic act codified Eliza's sensationalised narrative into the physical geography of the British Empire. Government departments, maritime charts, and school books adopted the name without hesitation, ignoring the sworn depositions of second mate John Baxter and steward Joseph Corrales, whose testimonies lay buried in administrative files. For nearly 180 years, this administrative designation persisted. A single, contested survival story became an official spatial reality, anchoring a colonial narrative to the sand itself. By renaming the territory after a shipwrecked survivor who spent only 53 days on its shores, the colonial administration effectively erased thousands of years of human history, leaving a quiet question of what else this fabricated geography had pushed out of view. Beneath the cartography lies a world of strange geological extremes. K'gari is the largest sand island on Earth, a massive landmass stretching around 120 kilometres long and covering more than 1,600 square kilometres. To understand this scale is to understand the sheer volume of material required to build it. Nearly every visible landform is composed of pure silica sand, piled into monumental dunes that rise up to 240 metres above the Pacific Ocean. This colossal formation was not created overnight. Over hundreds of thousands of years, powerful ocean currents and longshore drift carried quartz sediment northward from the southern coasts of New South Wales. Blocked by volcanic headlands on the continental shelf, the drifting sand began to settle, accumulating grain by grain, century after century. This slow accumulation didn't just build a landmass, it established a massive barrier that permanently altered the region's marine currents, halting the northward flow of sediment. Wind and rising sea levels continuously reshaped the coast, pushing the dunes inland to form a dense, layered stack of sand. What exists today is a giant, unconfined aquifer holding vast volumes of fresh water, suspended entirely within a shifting, porous matrix. The island is a physical paradox, a terrain that appears permanent and solid, yet is entirely fluid, shaped by the unyielding forces of the wind and the sea. Within this giant dune system, a biological mystery takes root. Standard ecological models dictate that tall, complex rainforests require rich organic soils to grow. Yet, across Kagari, ancient subtropical canopy trees, including massive Saturnae and brush box, stand over 200 metres above the ocean, anchored in nothing but highly leached, nutrient-poor quartz sand. Constant rain and wind strip the dunes of basic minerals, leaving a sterile substrate that typically supports little more than stunted coastal scrub. Instead, a dense ancient forest thrives. The explanation for this anomaly lies beneath the forest floor, hidden from view. The trees do not draw their sustenance directly from the sand. Instead, they survive through a highly cooperative underground partnership. An expansive network of ectomycorrhizal fungi, including species of Cortinarius and Lacaria, webs through the upper layers of the dunes, physically attaching to the root systems of the trees. When leaf litter, branches, and organic debris fall to the forest floor, these fungi immediately decompose the material. They lock up scarce nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen before the elements can wash away through the porous silica. The fungi transfer these recycled minerals directly into the living roots of the trees in exchange for vital carbon. This closed, highly active loop ensures that almost no nutrients are lost to the surrounding environment. Rather than relying on rich earth, the towering canopy relies on a biological system that recycles its own organic waste with perfect efficiency. This constant underground exchange allows massive trees to grow where there is virtually no soil, proving that the island is a highly active, living engine of survival. The physical mysteries of this sand mass extend to its water. High above the regional water table, suspended in the dunes, sit more than 40 perched lakes. These bodies of water defy gravity, held in place by a dense, impermeable layer known as organic hardpan. Over thousands of years, decaying leaves, bark, and organic matter have filtered down through the sand, mixing with aluminum and iron oxides to form a black, concrete-like seal. This barrier prevents the water from draining away into the porous sand below. Lake Mackenzie, known historically as Burungura, is the most extreme example of this isolation. Fed entirely by direct rainfall, The lake has no streams flowing in and no outlets to the sea. The pure silica sand acts as a natural filter, stripping away impurities but leaving the water highly acidic, with a pH often below 5. With phosphorus levels under 2 micrograms per litre, the lake is virtually sterile. It is a biological desert of striking sapphire clarity, so depleted of nutrients that almost no fish, plants, or organic life can survive in its depths. For the Buchola people, who have maintained continuous custodianship of this country for 20,000 years, these clear, perched waters are not ecological anomalies. They are the eyes of a creation spirit. According to their dreaming narrative, the messenger Yindingi was helped by a princess spirit named Kagari to shape the land, the seas, and the skies. Falling in love with the fine white sands and the towering green forests, she begged to remain there. To grant her wish, the Creator remade her as the island itself, laying her down in the ocean to look up at the sky forever. The perched lakes became her blue eyes, the dunes her hair, and the dense rainforest her green mantle. To her descendants, this place is Kagari, a living ancestor whose name translates to paradise. Her presence remains woven directly into the land, turning every sand dune, clear stream, and ancient tree into a physical piece of a sacred spirit. This is a country defined not by a shipwreck, colonial myth, or survival, but by an ancient living relationship. The Buchola people live by a rigorous system of law that operated centuries before European institutions arrived on these shores. These principles function as binding cultural laws, regulating human conduct on a fragile sand landmass. The first law demands absolute environmental priority. What is good for the land must come first. The second enforces respect for ownership and boundaries. Do not take what does not belong to you. The third establishes a system of communal survival. If you have plenty, you must share. Together, these three laws form a legal framework. They make the island fully legible, guiding how the Buchola manage the giant freshwater aquifer, harvest the rainforest, and move across the country. This living code of conduct remains embedded in the sand, dictating proper human behaviour for over 20,000 years. Colonial settlement fractured the ancient system of custody through direct violence and introduced diseases like influenza and tuberculosis. By the late 19th century, the Buchola population had suffered a catastrophic collapse, dwindling from thousands of people to just a few hundred. Those who survived the frontier conflicts faced systematic, state-sanctioned removal from their ancestral home. In 1897, the government established the Bogimba Creek Reserve on the island. Confined to this damp, malaria-prone settlement, the remaining population faced severe malnutrition and illness, documented in bleak mission diaries and official correspondence. In 1904, the state closed the reserve and forcibly deported the survivors to distant mainland missions, including Cherbourg, Woorabinda, and Yarrabah. This forced exile severed the physical connection to Kagari that had endured for 20,000 years. On the mainland reserves, the state enforced strict bans, forbidding the Buchola from speaking their native language or practicing their culture, pushing their ancient laws and oral histories toward total silence. By the mid-20th century, virtually no Buchola remained on the island. As the original custodians were exiled, the geography itself was rewritten. The island's true name was officially buried, replaced on every map by the name of Eliza Fraser, the shipwreck survivor who had spent only 53 days on its shores. The silencing of K'gari's original name left a void, filled for generations by a manufactured legend. But maps are paper, and the physical reality of this island refuses to be entirely tamed by colonial ink. As we examine the modern struggles defining this sandmass, the friction between human myth and the raw forces of nature becomes impossible to ignore. To understand what is truly at stake on these shores today, we must look beyond the shoreline. The ancient forces that shaped this paradise did not vanish with the exile of its people. They remain wild, unpredictable, and increasingly dangerous. The dingoes of K'gari, known as the Wangari, are among the last genetically pure strains in Australia. Genetic research by Dr. Kylie Cairns shows that this isolated population has almost no domestic dog hybridisation, making them a distinct conservation priority. With high inbreeding levels and low genetic diversity, their future on the island is fragile. But they are not tourist attractions, and K'gari is not a theme park. They are wild apex predators, whose survival depends on maintaining a strict boundary with humans. As tourism expanded, careless waste disposal and deliberate feeding altered the animals' hunting behaviour, turning natural curiosity into bold aggression. On April 30th, 2001, this friction became fatal when 9-year-old Clinton Gage was attacked and killed on the island. The official coroner's inquiry prompted an immediate cull of high-risk animals and forced the state to build predator-proof fences and introduce strict waste laws. Yet, the warning remains unheeded by many. Subsequent maulings, including a pack attack on a beach jogger in 2023, serve as a direct reminder that the danger is ongoing. In sober public records, these events stand as evidence that K'gari's beauty coexists with real, lethal consequences. The Wangari are not monsters to be feared, nor pets to be fed, but a sovereign part of a wild country that still enforces its own laws of survival. In 1905, a steel-hulled triple-screw steamer named the steamship Maheno was launched. During the First World War, she served as a hospital ship carrying thousands of wounded soldiers from Gallipoli back to safety. By July 1935, her service was complete. While being towed to Osaka, Japan for scrap, a severe cyclone struck on July 9th, snapping her heavy tow line. Drifting helpless in the dark, the massive vessel eventually ran aground on the sands of 75 Mile Beach. Today, the Maheno remains exactly where the ocean claimed her, a rotting skeleton of iron slowly sinking into the sand. It has become one of the country's most haunting images, a stranded colonial relic still visible in plain sight. The rusting hulk functions as a silent witness, a physical residue of a bygone era left behind on a beach that was never meant to bear its weight, enduring the wind and the salt. On July 20th, 2023, the Queensland Government officially gazetted the restoration of the island's traditional name, legally stripping Fraser Island from the state's map. This decision, coordinated with the Butchulla Aboriginal Corporation, ended 181 years of cartographic displacement. The change was both symbolic and practical, altering legal property deeds, maritime charts, and public road signs. At the Kingfisher Bay ceremony, The atmosphere carried a solemn, quiet dignity, instead of triumphant celebration, acknowledging that while a name can be restored, history cannot be easily repaired. The people who named this place Kagari had simply maintained their connection to the land, waiting for the official maps to catch up with their 20,000-year custody. Eliza Fraser's profitable fiction had dominated public imagination for 2 centuries, but the original name proved more durable than the colonial myth. Kagari returned to the records, a reminder that the oldest truths endure. Subscribe to our channel for more historical investigations. The name Kagari is restored, but the shifting sands cannot wash away the past. Eliza Fraser's fabricated captivity obscured a deeper truth, one older, stranger, and far darker than colonial myth. Today, as this ancient wilderness reclaims its identity, it reminds us that some secrets refuse to remain buried.